What is the FIT principle? Hi, I'm Hayley from Parallel Coaching, and in this video we're going to explore what the FIT principle is and how you can use this as a FITPRO in your consultations and in your planning for clients. Now, before we get started on the content, I just want to let you know that there are 3 mock questions to help you test your knowledge on today's information. If you're already on our blog, all you've got to do is scroll down to the bottom. If you're not on our blog yet, then just click the link that is with this video and it will take you straight there. So let's understand what the FIT principle is and how we use it. Now, quite often it kind of goes without being said. People can just assume that everybody knows what the FIT principle is. Now, it's essentially an acronym, F-I-T-T, and this acronym allows you to add sort of structure in how you're describing and the activity that a client might be doing or that you yourself are doing. So this is broken down with F meaning frequency. So this is the number of sessions that you're doing per week. So that you're going for a run twice a week, that you'll walk the dog 5 times a week. It's the number of times that you do that activity per week. And then intensity refers to the overload or the demand that you have on the body and the stress that that has on the body. You might measure this as RPE, so on a scale of 1 to 10, how do you feel? Heart rate could be METs, it could be the how breathless somebody is, it could be relating to their reps in reserve or their repetition maximum in relation to weight training. But it's the intensity of that activity. Then you've got type, so this is the category of that activity. Is it walking the dog? Is it that they go to a gym session, they do strength training? Is it that they run? Is it that they do yoga? What is the category or the description of the type of activity they're doing? And then finally, time refers to each of the sessions within that frequency we were talking about. So if I go for a run twice per week and I run for 30 minutes each week, then inside that I'm saying, well, each session is 30 minutes, therefore time would be 30 minutes. So it gives you the structure of understanding exactly what's happening in that activity session per week by using frequency, intensity, type and time. And that's the role of using the FIT principle. Now, have a go at describing your own FIT principle levels based on your own activity right now in the comments box below, so you can pause the video and just have a go at writing it out. So F equals and the number of times that you train, intensity equals then the intensity that you're giving it, the type, which is what you're doing, and then the time, which is how long you do that session for. So drop that in the comments below, and it's a really good way of consolidating and understanding what the FIT principle is. Now let's go on and have a look at how we would use the FIT principle. So as FITPROs, we use it in several ways. First of all, it's really important in a consultation or in our first meeting with the client. And the reason for this is that it's so valuable at being able to draw a picture of how our clients are training. So if your client just turns around to you and says, oh, I swim already, or I walk the dog, or I'm very active, we don't know how frequently they do that. We don't know how long that they do that for or how intense it is. So we need to have a bigger picture so that we can then find out more about their starting point in their activity and the starting point for their planning, but also relate it to anything that might have happened previously. So you might find questions that you can kind of dive deeper in that find out that, well, the reason why that they stopped training previously was down to a certain commitment they had, or the reason that they stopped doing exercise is because they got injured and they didn't come back afterwards. So you can start to break down and find out the reasons why they haven't adhered to exercise in the past. And that is really, really golden. So that's part of the reason why you would use questions about the FIT principle inside your consultation. So I want to give you some heads up and some ideas of the types of questions that you could ask your client that relate to each of the letters inside the FIT principle. So first of all, let's look at frequency. Frequency is really important to understand with nice big open questions how often they are training. So if someone turns around and you say, well, I swim every week. So how often do you swim every week? What's a typical week look like? What days do you go swimming? These are all questions that start to open up that dialogue to find out more about it. But then you can ask things like, going back 3 years or going back 10 years, did this look any differently? Did you start exercising in a different way? Was it any different to now? And this starts giving you that bigger picture of the history for your client, which will start to determine your client's training age. And training age is really important because it's basically showing you how active they've been previously. Very different to working with a beginner, to working with an intermediate or an advanced client that's been training for years. Then as you move into intensity, these open questions start to change a little bit more, and there are things about the idea of how hard is each session when you're training. If you were to rate this on a scale of 1 to 10, how hard would you say it is? Now, this is where it's important to open up that question even more. So when they say, oh, it's 7, you can say, okay, well, 7's a nice high number. What made you choose a 7 rather than a 9? Or what made you choose a 7 rather than a 5? And you're asking for them to justify their answer so you can find out more about their perception, because the 1 to 10 scale is very subjective. And at any point, you can always say, tell me more. And this is a really great open question because it literally expands that whole area to be able to understand in much more detail about what your client is currently doing or what they've done in the past. Then as we look at type, here you want to ask them about what their preferred activity is. Is there anything that they don't enjoy doing, or anything that they're from past experience that they've stuck to better than before that? And also time is really important to look at, whereby you're looking at how long each session is. They go, well, I go swimming every week. And you go, okay, so you're doing that twice a week. It's about kind of, you get a bit breathless. You're about a 5 out of 10 on your intensity. How long do you go for? And they go, well, 30 minutes. A nice question here would be to turn around and say, is that 30 minutes every time you go swimming or just occasionally? And here they can say, oh, well, sometimes it's 30 minutes, sometimes it's more like 20, and I chat to my friend for a little while. So you can get a bigger picture of what's happening. And that's really a good way of being able to break it down and understand much more about your client and be able to understand much more about the overall load that they are participating in. And you can then break that down further, so know the total load that they're doing across all of their different types of activity. So you might have a FIT principle set out for when they go to yoga once a week. Then you might have a FIT principle set out for when they do resistance training twice a week, and the FIT principle when they go for a run 3 times a week. And you've kind of got all these clear things all set out. You also might have one for when they walk the dog 7 times a week. So you have the clear understanding of their FIT principle, and you can add up all of that load together to show that their total frequency, intensity, type and time, so that you know what you're adding to when you start prescribing activity. Which leads us in to how do we use the FIT principle when planning and prescribing activity and exercise. So how do we do this effectively? And I think a nice way to look at this would be to use a case study so you can really understand how we'd do it. And I want you to imagine that you've got a client who's got a strength goal whereby he wants to really improve his clean and jerk exercise. That's what his overall goal is. Now, what we need to do is, like we said with the consultation, find out what he's currently doing. Because if I don't find out what he's currently doing or what he's done in the past, then I'm none the wiser on where to start with the programming, which is a big problem and a big question. So instead, I want to start off by finding out about what he currently does. Let's just say he turns around and he says, all I do is twice a week, I do strength training, I practice my clean and jerk, I do some other sort of big compound lifts using the barbell and free weights. And then I also do some resistance machines in that time as well. About 50 minutes every time I go to the gym twice a week. What sort of intensity are you at? And he's like, well, yeah, I'm working in the strength range. I'm doing 6 reps every time I sort of do a set. You're like, okay, that's interesting. So you've got the information you needed about what he's currently doing. Now this can filter in to help you be able to set out your plan for your client in advance. So let's start by using that FIT principle to help us plan. Let's start by looking at frequency. Our client at the moment is only doing twice per week. So what I can't do is go straight in on the first week back and go, here you go, here's five times a week. This is how much I want you to be training. Even if I think that that is optimal for him to get his goal. So I know that I want him to do more than 2, but right now he's been able to stick to doing twice per week. So I would start by mimicking the type of activity or the frequency that they're already doing. Then after the first 1 or 2 weeks, then I might start logically progressing that frequency as the first thing to look at. If I do too much too soon, then my client's going to get, first of all, a lot of DOMs, and that muscle soreness is going to come through because of the increased frequency and the lack of rest in between. He also might be more likely to have an injury. And alongside that, not just the physical changes, but also the routine changes that start to happen. So his routine starts to adapt, his routine starts to change, and that might put other strains on him and his life and his work and his relationships. And as a result, mean that his adherence to the whole goal drops. So I have to make it something that is achievable for my client. And that's the benefit of logically progressing that frequency over time and not doing too much too soon. Then when I analyse the intensity for my client and how I want to progress the intensity, I might go, well, actually, he's training in the right kind of intensity. He's doing 6 repetitions per set. He's getting to overload on every set pretty much. Maybe I could just tweak it a little bit and make sure he's around the right time, but it's about right. Or there's other areas that I need to improve on if, for example, with a different client. But you want to kind of go, well, with that intensity, is he kind of training how I want him to be at an optimal level, or do I need to gradually progress that over time? Again, not doing too much too soon. Then we've got type. So our client has said here that they're just doing 2 resistance sessions per week. There's no mention of cardiovascular, flexibility, or motor skills. And what we want to factor in is all those other areas. So if it's very true that he's not doing anything else at all, I need to make sure that he's starting to get all of the different components of fitness in his training. Cardiovascular training done in the right intensity will massively benefit this clean and jerk goal, this strength goal, because we can start training the type 2B muscle fibers and training the creatine phosphate energy system, which with some really high intensity interval work, which will then really benefit his ability to perform during his clean and jerk. I might find that when I do a squat assessment and I do a consultation analysis of how my client is moving, actually he's quite limited in range of movement around his calf and around the hip. And that could be the thing that's limiting his ability to do his clean and jerk the most. So he would really benefit from including flexibility as the thing that would improve his performance the most. So you want to make sure that the components of fitness are being covered, not just as a way of saying, oh, we've got to include them, but actually because they benefit the whole body, they benefit the whole goal coming together. That's a really important thing to bear in mind in your planning. Then you also want to factor in the time, which is a nice way of being able to gradually progress, especially if frequency is a little bit tight. So like I said earlier with this client, he can only do twice per week. But what I might do is gradually make each session kind of 5 minutes longer or a few minutes longer. It doesn't get noticed in his routine to start off with, but it might be a nice way of gradually progressing the amount of load that's going through the body as a whole. And that's a really good way of logically using the FIT principle to plan. You're just changing 1 or 2 things every week and gradually progressing using that FIT principle to help guide towards the adaptation you want to see in their anatomy and their physiology to help them prepare for the goal that they have in mind. And that's what we're here to do as FITPROs, isn't it? We want to be able to know where are they at the start point. That's why we've got all that information about FIT principles. And then we want to use that information and allow them to be able to gradually and logically progress their anatomy and their physiology so that they can get the goal that they desire. That's what we do. And I think it kind of sums it up really nicely. So the FIT principle is very, very valuable. It's not just the thing you learn at level 2 principles of exercise and then never touch. It's really valuable and it's kind of an integral part of the FITPRO role. If you're looking to progress yourself as a FITPRO, then a really good place to start is by learning more about planning, consultations, and how you work with your client. And the way that we teach you to do that is inside our coaching program called FITPRO 31. If you want to find out more about that, then you can join us by clicking the link that is with this video, and it'll explain everything alongside FITPRO 31 and how you can progress yourself as a FITPRO so that you can guarantee those anatomical and physiological adaptations with your client to help them get the goal. Outside of that, make sure that you've checked out the mock questions that are alongside this video so that you can test your knowledge and check that you understand the FIT principle totally. And as I said earlier, make sure you drop in the comments box below what your FIT principle is right now and what your big takeaway has been from today's video. Thank you so much for joining me, and I look forward to seeing you on the next video. Take care.
Thank you.